We actually hit 30K MRR on Friday. It's pretty cool. Thank you. Last year, when I was at MicroConf, we were at 5K. And it was with the pipe burst and everything like that. And it was kind of fun because Stelly was on stage and he's given his really high energy sales talk. And there was somebody counting the swear words that he said. They counted 58 swear words from Stelly. See, I can't swear like Stelly, so I'm not gonna try. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And then there was Heaton. Okay, so Heaton's like a star of MicroConf, right? So I want to talk to him, like I'm starstruck. So I'm like, Heaton, I'm kind of stuck at 5K MRR. What should I do? And he was like, what's working for you? And I'm like, well, we do this. He's like, double down on that. So every time I think of Heaton, it's like, double down on that. All right, sorry. So so what did I do? So I had 5K MRR a year ago. So there's a guy named Jason Lemkin, and he runs an organization called SaaSter. And he is the godfather of SaaS. I mean, like he had a couple $100 million exits. I'm sure you guys have heard of him. And so one of the things that he says when you're around 5K, he doesn't give that number, but when you're around 5K MRR, he's like, okay, when you're ready to sell or to hire salespeople, don't hire one, hire two. So I had done like, I don't know, 85% of the sales to get up to 5K MRR. And I was like, okay, I'm burnt out, I'm stressed out, that's why I'm here at MicroConf. Can I outsource sales or customer success? It's like, I thought I could leaving MicroConf last year. I was like, no way, I learned that. And so I hired two. I took my 5K, I took all my money, and I hired two people. And then probably threw in some extra money too. And the first account exec, on her first day of work, she closed a deal that was like twice as big as any deal I had ever done. So that's one thing I can definitely recommend is when you're at that 5K level or so, you're approaching it maybe, and you've been doing all the selling, and you have to do all the selling yourself. You can't outsource it. Like the founder has to do the selling, or founders. But when you're ready to hire a salesperson, don't hire one, hire two. Sorry, I'm looking at my crib notes. Oh yeah, then the big question became like, how do we compensate this person? Okay, and so people stress a lot about like what should the sales commission percentage be and all that kind of stuff. What I found was look in your market. First of all, forget this remote sales stuff. Well, that's my experience. Don't do remote sales. Bring them into your office. And it kind of sucked. I had to get an office too. And I was like, I'm an introvert. I want to work at home, but like I pushed through my boundaries, got the office, and I was like, okay, I looked around, what are salespeople in my town making? What do they want as a base? What do they want as an on-target earnings? And can I afford to pay them? Okay, so I knew that in my best month, I had added $600 to the MRR, in my best sales month. So I thought like, okay, maybe they can do $700 month in, month out, because they'll be doing it full time, they'll be better than me. Maybe that's the way I could do it. So you can work out the math. You can actually say like, well, I want the on-target earnings to be here. I'm at a base of here. What's the difference? And you can say if they add like, say $1,000 in MRR a month, and you do the math and you're like, well, if I pay them this % of the annual contract value of a deal, then by the time the math all works out, you get from their base to their OTE, their on-target earnings. So that was a big lesson learned for me. And like there was no end of like going around and like coming up with the right percentage for that one. All right. Sorry, I don't have slides like those guys. Oh yeah, paying out commissions. So I'm really cheap, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, like I just signed up a monthly customer, and this customer is paying me once a month. So my initial sales plan was to drip out a sales commission over 12 months. It was a terrible idea. Like very first salesperson, she's like, oh yeah, I'll sign up, it's great, And then like, she really read the sales compensation plan again, and she sent me a message saying like, this isn't gonna work. So what I learned right away is like, basically what Jason Lemkin says from SaaStr. And again, everything I'm saying here is just a regurgitation of what Jason Lemkin says. So he basically says, just pay out your salesperson their full commission right away. And there's a big part of me that's like, oh man, I don't want to do that. Like, what if they churn? I got a monthly payer. What if they churn after 2 months? Like, I'll lose money. And I stressed about that a little bit too long. And Lemkin basically just says, don't sweat it, because you're going to figure out the sales commission percentage that works. So if you have a lot of people who are churning out after 2 months, you're going to adjust that percentage so it all works out well in the end. Because if you're hiring, if you're self-funded single founder like me, the people you're hiring, they're not going to quite have the passion that you do, okay? We all know this, right? So, you got to make it easy for your sales staff. You got to, basically what I finally concluded was pay out the whole thing. Just pay them out. Now, I do wait until we get the money, of course. And once in a while, someone does churn, before I've actually got back that commission. But I don't worry about clawbacks, nothing like that. And that's basically what Jason Lemkin says, is don't worry about the clawbacks, just pay them out. Sorry, crib notes again. Oh yeah, in terms of salespeople too. Everyone talks about, you want someone with 5 years in inside sales, B2B SaaS and stuff like that. And I just wasn't finding people like that. So what worked for me in the end was people who had done actual sales, not retail, a little bit different than that, 2 to 4 years experience. As long as they could demo well, they had some decent amount of computer skills, then I could get them to close. In fact, my initial 2 hires, one woman, one man, the man could demo better than the woman, and he picked it up faster, but he wasn't near as good a closer as she was. And I started calling her the closer, because she started closing so much business. And she wasn't quite as good at demoing, and she didn't pick it up as fast. But I kind of learned from that I learned that closing skills far outweigh demo skills. So I've only got a few more minutes. So anyway, yeah, so I hired the 2 AEs, and when you're ready to hire 1 AE, hire 2. And 1 had to resign because of family emergency reasons. And so I kind of diverted from that track, and I said, well, I've got some extra money, what should I do with it? So I ended up hiring a growth hacker. So Jason Lemkin says, you should hire your first VP of marketing early on. He hired his at 20K MRR. And so I was like, well, I got some extra money. I'll hire a growth hacker. And I know that everyone here talks about different ways you can outsource it, but for me, what worked was hiring an in-house growth hacker. And so I was able to take that money, and that growth hacker is, of course, able to boost leads. And then eventually, revenue grew. And as soon as we made more profit, I'd want to hire. And so I backfilled that AE later on. Sorry, this is the least polished talk today. Oh boy. Oh yeah, customer success. So I hired that. So once my first AE was starting to close and I was starting to feel confident, and it's Brian was just saying, fire yourself. I was like, okay. How can I pull myself off and the developer I work with, how can I pull us off of customer success? So we went ahead and hired customer success. And so basically, every time there was a little bit of profit, we just hired. We're still not profitable at 30K MRR. That's okay. I don't know, maybe I want to wrap up. The last thing I guess I'll leave it with is a lot of people also talk, at 30K MRR, I don't stress quite so much about, penny pinching, I guess. And so now we're ready for that administrative assistant, that office assistant. And so what Jason Lemkin again says is, actually it's Mark Suster, the VC fellow. He always says when you do your Series A funding, the first hire he recommends is an office assistant, office admin. Because they're like a force multiplier. They just make all those little non-automated things that you have to do and kind of take that away from you. And what I like about that, better than a virtual assistant, is I can say hey, look at my screen, can you make that into that? And leave them alone. Whereas if I fear that if I'm using a virtual assistant, I have to write a bunch of instructions. Anyway, that's just been my experience. Anyway, that's it. So I was really frustrated a year ago at 5K MRR. So basically, I do recommend reading Jason Lemkin's blog. He posts all the time for SaaStr. And I kind of got over a couple of those humps. And then, you know, we were last Friday, we hit 30K MRR. So my recommendation would be like, read everything. And then my final, that Jason Lemkin says, and my final recommendation would be double down on that.